Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our first run review of the Garmin Marq Athlete Gen 2. So here's what you need to know about the Garmin Marq Athlete Gen 2 and what's new from the first Marq Athlete. It's priced at £1,600 in the UK or $1,900 in the US, putting it in the same launch price realm as the original Athlete. It's packing the same 46mm case size and includes new grade 5 titanium in the design for a more tougher exterior. There's now a new 1.2 inch 390 by 390 resolution AMOLED touchscreen, 5 physical buttons, and the 22mm watch strap is removable. You're also getting something that's waterproof up to 100 meters depth. Features wise, you're getting pretty much everything you'll find on Garmin's Fenix 7 and Epix watches, including the same sport and activity modes, smartwatch features, and features like preloaded topo maps. The big improvements on the original Athlete include the multi-band and Sat IQ technology for more accurate outdoor tracking. There's training readiness insights, the morning report, wrist-based running power, and there's a new jet lag advisor which is new to the Garmin range and seeks to help you transition from your new time zone through recommendations around sleep and exercise around that flying time. Battery life is up to 16 days in smartwatch mode or 6 days with the screen set to always on. That's up 4 days from the original Marq. It offers up to 28 hours in its top multi-band tracking mode, which is bigger than the multi-band battery on the Garmin Epix for context. It also offers up to 42 hours in its GPS only mode, which is up from the 28 hours promised on the first Marq. So design is the big deal ultimately with the Marq range, and Garmin's way of trying to create something that feels a little bit more high-end, a little bit more luxury, and trying to justify spending a lot more money on this watch compared to other watches in its range. Now, there are some differences from the original Marq that I think some are positive, some maybe not so much. Obviously, one of the big things you're getting here is that you're getting grade 5 titanium in the design, which is tougher and more durable than the titanium used in the previous watch, and also is designed to keep the overall weight of the watch down. Now, it is a little bit thicker as well, which, I mean, if you like a kind of big, kind of chunkier watch, then great. If not, it has lost a little bit of that kind of slimmer form factor that you got on the original Marq as well. Now, I do quite like the look of the Athlete. I quite like the kind of color accents you get on the kind of bezel and on the kind of main tracking button as well. I think, you know, in terms of creating something that feels a little bit more refined, Garmin has done a good job here. Now, the big deal here really is the screen. Now, on the first Garmin Marq, you had a transflective display, and for me, that really, I struggle to really get on board with this being a kind of high-end luxury watch when you kind of look at the kind of nice case materials and then you look at that screen, which obviously offers great visibility outdoors, but ultimately doesn't help create that kind of more luxury look. Now, you've got an AMOLED screen on here, so it's matching what you get on the Epix and the kind of Venue 2 watches. Now, in terms of the kind of screen you're getting, you are getting actually a smaller screen than the Epix. I think the resolution is less than the Garmin Venue 2 to give you a sense of the kind of quality you're getting. Now, it's still a good AMOLED screen. It's not the best one that you're getting on a Garmin watch that has an AMOLED, but for me it was fine. It's sharp, it was vibrant, you're getting good colors there. It isn't always on display as well, which does cut the battery life like it does on the Epix and the kind of Venue watches as well. In terms of creating that nicer look, I do think it is a big deal in terms of doing that, and that's the main thing I think to take away from the Marq Athlete Gen 2 is that now that it has that AMOLED screen, it's much nicer to use. It's a touch screen as well, like it is on the Epix and the Venue 2. It's nice and responsive. It's a nice way to kind of get around, also kind of, you know, view maps as well, which you do have that kind of support, that kind of preloaded topo map support on here, like the Epix and the Fenix as well. So from a designer point of view, there's a lot of positives. I think the fact that you're getting that color screen is a big deal. What I don't love as much is a little bit thicker, the kind of things I think you would notice day to day, unless you like a really kind of big, kind of showy, bulky watch. And from that point of view, it does kind of deliver those kind of higher grade materials. You can still change those straps. They've got a kind of different lug connector to the kind of other Garmin watches, kind of Forerunner and the Epix and Fenix. So slightly different to kind of remove the straps, but you can do that. The charging setup is different to, it's not the universal kind that you get on other Garmin watches. So it's kind of a clip-based one that you kind of clip on the back of the watch. It was the same deal with the original Garmin Marq. So it's another proprietary charging cable that you are going to have to deal with. So yeah, for me, in terms of design point of view and creating that nicer, more luxury feeling watch, I do think, you know, it's very similar in terms of what you get in the original Marq. You have got that AMOLED screen here. It's not the best AMOLED screen that you're getting on a Garmin watch, or you can get on a Garmin watch, and it's still just one case size as well, like the original Marq. So there are some improvements. I do think it's a nice looking watch. The color screen is great on it. But is it enough to kind of justify spending that amount of money? I'm not sure. Now we're going to get into the kind of run testing side of things to see how it performs when we have to get out and run with this watch. So into that run test and what it's been like to live with the Garmin Marq Athlete Gen 2. And what I will say, having, I'm a long-term kind of Epix user. I use the latest Fenix watches, and I have used the previous Marq Athlete as well. And what I will say is the experience of using this watch and running with this watch is very similar to what I've experienced with the Epix. A lot of the things that you're getting on that Epix and latest Fenix watch are on this watch in terms of that running experience. The kind of things that you're gaining from the original Garmin Marq, obviously you are getting that color display now, which makes it a lot nicer to kind of view your stats on kind of inside and outside of tracking. You've got software features like training readiness. You do have the HRV status on the original Garmin Marq, you don't have the training readiness feature. You've got things like morning report. You have got the multi-band GNSS kind of mode and Sat IQ kind of mode as well, which kind of automatically picks the right, or what it perceives to be the best kind of GPS mode for you, depending on location and type of running you're doing. But I think the main thing is that you've got that multi-band GNS mode in there now, which obviously has really impressed us on the Forerunner 955, the Epix, and on the Fenix. And also you've got it on the 255 as well. And from my experience, it seems very solid overall. Similar levels of kind of battery life drop off. Obviously it demands a lot more of the battery. The multi-band battery life on this watch is a little bit better on paper compared to the Epix. But I think ultimately you're getting kind of 25 kind of hours worth of kind of that in that mode ultimately. And it is very, very reliable, like it has been in my time with the Epix and the Fenix as well. In terms of other features, as I said, all the kind of software features that you get on the Fenix and Epix are here, in terms of creating workouts, in terms of the kind of analysis you're getting, heart rate monitoring performance. I would say it's a little bit like the case I have with the bigger kind of Garmin Fenix models, where I think the kind of smaller case sizes kind of suit better in terms of getting more reliable heart rate data, and in terms of kind of steady paced runs, it's absolutely fine. Kind of up the kind of pace a little bit, go a little bit quicker, and then you start to see some discrepancies in terms of that kind of maximum heart rate data and some kind of random spikes. It's not as bad as some other watches, but I would definitely pair a heart rate monitor chest strap like most watches that I test, and you can do that on this watch. In terms of running with this watch in general, I mean, I have noticed the extra kind of weight. It doesn't feel like maybe it's a lot, but I mean, it's almost kind of 10 grams more than something like the Epix, and I think the 7X as well. So that gives you a bit of a sense of the extra weight that you're playing with, and something that you would notice. Something I notice if I take it to bed and kind of track sleep as well. So yeah, there is some kind of weight gain there from the original Marq and from other kind of expensive, kind of pricey Garmin watches as well. But for me, I think the general running experience, as I said, is very similar to the Epix and the Fenix. Mostly the Epix because of that color display. I think in terms of that kind of mapping and navigation support, in terms of the kind of running kind of stats accuracy, the fact you've got things like wrist-based running power, all the things that you're going to get from those kind of Epix and Fenix watches are pretty much here, and that is a good thing, and it definitely feels like a step up in terms of the running features that you're going to get on the original Marq, and obviously the Marq is a little bit old now. It's probably unlikely to get a lot of the features that are now on the Athlete Gen 2, so that is something to keep in mind of as well. So for me, I think if you've used an Epix or a Fenix 7 and you're wondering what the Marq Athlete Gen 2 is like to live with, it's pretty similar to that, and I would say, and in terms of the kind of data accuracy, I think from a heart rate monitoring performance, similar to what I experienced on the bigger Fenix models when you're going at higher intensity. But generally elsewhere, it's a very, very solid running watch. Everything you kind of want from a kind of top end Garmin, this is what you're getting on this watch. The only really notable addition that I've seen, or software kind of extra, is that kind of jet lag advisor. Now, I'm not going anywhere soon, so I can't really get a sense of how well that works. I've kind of set it up. I've kind of put in a flight to see the kind of data that I would get from it. And essentially what it'll do, the closer you get, I think it's the closer you get to that kind of flying time, it will start to recommend, you know, differences in terms of sleep schedule, the kind of, you know, amount of light you should expose yourself to, you know, to make sure that you kind of transition to that different time zone. It's quite a nice feature, but ultimately it is going to come to the other watches, the Epix and the Fenix. So it's going to be a unique feature for the Marq range, but not for long, I imagine. But outside of that, I mean, it's pretty much identical in terms of the feature set, where things live, the kind of performance you're going to get here on the Marq Athlete Gen 2. Yeah, it feels very similar to what I've experienced on the Epix and on the Fenix 7 range as well. Okay, so initial thoughts after some test runs with the Garmin Marq Athlete Gen 2. And I think there is a couple of ways to look at this. Now, if you did like the Garmin Marq, you had the money to spend on the Marq, this is definitely a better watch and definitely a better running watch as well. There's all those features from the Fenix and Epix watches that you're getting on this watch. So performance-wise, you're seeing, I think, similar in terms of what you're going to get on the Marq Athlete Gen 2. And then that addition of the AMOLED screen, which I think the first Marq was really lacking in terms of creating something that felt high end. And now it's got a screen that I think better suits that kind of profile, and it feels a lot nicer to use and to wear, I think, overall. It just really elevates the look of the Marq, or the latest version of the Marq. I think the other way to look at it, is it good value for money in terms of what else you can get out there, and also even Garmin's range particularly? My answer would be probably not. Pretty much everything you're getting here, you can get on the Epix and the Fenix watches. I think with something like the Epix, you can kind of dress that up with a nicer strap and still get, I think, a nice formal, friendly look, and still get something that delivers all those same features in terms of tracking, kind of mapping, navigation, kind of, you know, battery life as well. You're getting maybe a little bit more battery life off the Athlete Gen 2 in terms of kind of that multi-band mode, but ultimately I don't think it's a massive pull for me in terms of saying you've got to go for this over the Epix. I think on the Epix as well, you're probably getting a bigger, kind of nicer screen. I think it's thinner and a little bit lighter as well, depending on what model you go for as well. But if you like that kind of big, bulky, kind of bolder look, then that's what the Marq Gen 2 is going to give you. So yeah, for me, it feels better than the original Marq in terms of being a running watch, and one that feels like a nice looking watch that is a little bit closer to justifying that price tag. And then looking at it in comparison to the other Garmin watches that are out there, I would say probably go for the Epix. If you can live without that kind of titanium on titanium kind of design, you can live without that kind of jet lag advisor feature, which I know, having been at the Garmin Marq launch event in Lisbon, that will be coming to the Epix and Fenix as well. I just don't know when yet. And you get a little bit extra battery life, but I don't think it's enough to really kind of pull you away from kind of spending considerably less on the Epix instead. So yeah, those are my kind of initial thoughts on the Garmin Marq Athlete Gen 2. Definitely a better equipped running watch and a better looking watch than the original Garmin Marq. In terms of value, I would go for the Epix. I think you can get a nice looking watch there, all the same level of features pretty much, for less money too. Okay, so to have it, those are our initial thoughts on the Garmin Marq Athlete Gen 2. Now, obviously, plenty more testing to do before we do that full review, but that will give you a bit of a sense of how we're feeling about this watch and how it compares to the Marq and other Garmin watches as well. If you've got any questions about this watch, let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.